Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on certification. My name is Amelia Shaw, and I am the IAP2 USA Executive Manager, and it is with absolute real pleasure that we welcome you to today's webinar. We want this to be an interactive session, and I'm hoping that everyone can hear me now. Please let me know if you can't hear me. But today is an interactive session. You can participate in today's session by raising your hand or just by sending us a question in the question box. We seem to be experiencing just a few technical glitches right now with voice and video, so my apologies if you're not hearing us. So please let me know. But it's with real pleasure that I get to welcome you to welcome Wendy Greenlow, who is the chair of the IAP2 Certification Task Force. Both she and the incredible team of people that she works with have been working exceptionally hard over the past 2 years, and it is with real pleasure that we now announce that we're launching the program. It's no longer in its pilot stage, so this is very exciting. So over to you, Wendy, to take us through today's
hello,
webinar.
Everyone. Great. Thanks, Amelia. And I'd like to thank everyone that's participating today. As Amelia explained, I've been chairing a task force that was convened by the IAP2 USA Board of Directors with the specific task of developing a proposal for a professional certification program. The task force has been meeting since November of 2013. The purpose of this webinar today is to tell you about the professional certification program and help you understand how you can go about applying for certification. I want to start with just a tiny bit of background on the certification program. With the blessings of IAP2 Federation and with help from Southern Africa and Canadian affiliates, the IAP2 USA Board convened a task force to develop this program. And the task force's goal was to create a professional certification program for IAP2 USA that could serve as a template for other affiliates that want to define their own programs. The task force has met approximately twice a month via conference call since November of 2013, and we've had the opportunity to meet face-to-face twice in 2015. Members include Deborah Dewar from Scottsdale, Arizona, Tina Geiselbrecht from Austin, Texas, Cassie Hemphill from Missoula, Montana, Hannah Litzenberger from Seattle, Washington, and me from Loveland, Colorado, as well as Brenda Pichette from Ottawa, Canada, and Ken Smith from South Africa. And we've been staffed by Amelia Shaw and Jennifer Armstrong. Oops, that didn't work. There we go. 2015, we conducted a pilot for the certification program the day after the conference in Portland, and we were lucky enough to have 3 brave souls apply for and attend the pilot, and we were so pleased when it turned out that they were highly qualified. All 3 were awarded the Master Certified Public Participation Professional level of certification. We learned a lot during and leading up to the pilot, and it's taken us the time since September to do all the fine-tuning we needed to do to call the program ready to go. So based on the many lessons learned from the 2015 pilot, we've refined the program and we're ready to conduct 2 assessment centers in 2016. They will be held on June 24th and 7th in locations that have not yet been determined, and that's based on the assumption that we'll have enough candidates to make those 2 sessions work financially. So before, well, I want to orient you to 3 sets of numbers that are important for the professional certification program. There are 2 levels of certification. There's the Certified Public Participation Professional, and the Master Certified Public Participation Professional. So 2 levels of certification, and they are assessed using a 3-step assessment process. The first step is submission of an application and portfolio. The second step is preparation of a response to a case study. And third is participation in an assessment center. That 3-step process evaluates candidates' performance against 5 core competencies. So I'm going to be talking about these 3 sets of numbers over the duration of this conference or this webinar. I'm going to start in reverse order, or go in reverse order. So first are the 5 core competencies. The professional certification program for IAP2 USA is based on these core competencies that were developed based on input that we received from IAP2 members around the world. There were 2 member engagement processes that we conducted to collect ideas from members about the knowledge, skills, and competencies that they thought were essential for someone to be effective in this profession. And the 5 core competencies are listed on this slide. They include P2 process design and application, and these are the skills that are needed to design and conduct a public participation program. Second are the event planning and implementation skills. These are those skills that are needed to design and implement a specific event within an overall public participation program. Third is the appropriate use of tools and techniques, and these are the skills that are used to select tools and techniques that are well suited for an event's objectives. Then fourth are the communication skills that we need to effectively communicate in support of public participation efforts. And then last are the people skills, and these are the people skills that are needed by professionals in our field. So the professional certification programs, not just ours, but typically rely on a process of independently assessing candidates against core competencies. So once we define the core competencies, the task force focused our attention on developing a process for assessing candidates to see if we could independently verify that they have the essential skills. In order to do that, we developed a 3-step process, which includes the application and portfolio, the case study response, and participation in an assessment center. The application is designed to allow candidates to tell us a little bit about what they've done in the past. And then the case study response is designed to allow candidates to demonstrate their skills in a hypothetical scenario. And then the assessment center is designed to allow assessors to observe candidates, looking for evidence of a few things that we thought were not possible to assess using the application and or the case study. So what is really important for you to understand if you're interested in applying for certification is that the assessors are going to be looking for evidence throughout the entire 3-step process. And successful candidates should become thoroughly familiar with the core competencies and take advantage of every opportunity that we provide to demonstrate their skills and capabilities as they relate to the core competencies. So there's 2 levels of certification. We did this because we wanted to make the certification program accessible to as many members as possible. The Certified Public Participation Professional category was created to cover the essential core competencies, meaning the entire suite of skills that we believe are needed to do good work in our profession. And then the Master CP3 level was defined for more experienced and qualified professionals, and it includes a set of additional skills and capabilities that people may have acquired over years in the business. And the certification process was designed to assess both levels of professionals side by side. Candidates are looked at individually and assessed according to the 5 core competencies. So the next slide presents a diagram that one of our 3 MCP3s volunteered to develop to help explain our process. Again, I told you they were guinea pigs, so he helped us to illustrate what we were trying to do. So at the top of the diagram, you'll note that it says the assessment process is designed to allow candidates to demonstrate their skills in a way that can be verified by the assessors. This 3-step process is portrayed in the purple boxes that are across the bottom of the diagram. And before I forget, I should also mention that there is a prerequisite for applying for certification, and that is that candidates must have completed the IAP2 5-day course that is currently called the Foundations Program and was previously called the Certificate course. So once the prerequisite has been met, step 1 is the submission of the application and portfolio. And again, the purpose of this is to for the assessors to determine whether a candidate is really ready for assessment. So some candidates are not ready quite yet, and we'll encourage them to continue developing their skills. So those candidates that are ready to be evaluated are then invited to prepare a response to a case study. Because all of us bring different kinds of experience, the case study is a way to sort of level review process. And the case study is designed to allow candidates to provide more evidence of their knowledge and capabilities. And then finally, the assessment center is designed to look for evidence of skills that we really have to have the ability for direct observation. So I hope that diagram is helpful, and we'll come back to it later in the presentation. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the core competencies. As I explained, they were identified in consultation with IAP2 members as the essential capabilities that a public participation professional needs to effectively design, implement, and evaluate a public participation program. These competencies emerged from a qualitative analysis of a comprehensive list of knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, skills, behaviors, and capabilities that were identified in June 2014 by more than 100 professionals from around the globe who participated in a scientific survey. The descriptions and quality standards for each core competency were developed and tested and refined through an iterative process involving IAP2 members. So there are a total of 35 distinct criteria that are organized in the 5 broad categories. 31 of those are defined as criteria at the CP3 level, and every one of them is essential for certification. Candidates are also eligible to demonstrate their capabilities against 24 additional criteria at the master's level, although only 2/3 of that number is necessary for someone to achieve the master level of certification. I'm sure this is a little confusing, so I'm going to use the next 2 slides to provide a little bit more explanation. So on the IAP2 USA website, you can find a link to the core competencies, and it provides information about all of the 31 criteria. They are organized by the core competencies, and then each row represents a specific criteria, and it's described in the first column, and then the next 3 columns are used to indicate where the assessors will be looking for evidence. The next 2 columns, which are labeled MCP3 and CP3, describe the level of performance that we'll be looking for, the assessors will be looking for in the assessment process. And then the final column describes what we are calling inadequate performance. So in this particular case, what I'm presenting is the criterion number 1.1, which is the ability to work with a sponsor to understand the decision to be made, the decision-making process, and the role that the public might play in that decision-making process. So in this case, the assessors will be looking for evidence in the application and in the case study response. At the CP3 level, we've defined a quality standard that a candidate must be able to work with a sponsor to develop a full understanding of the decision to be made, the decision-making process, and how public input might improve the decision. Somebody that's not ready for certification will be unable to demonstrate that ability. So in this particular case, the same standard applies to both CP3 and MCP3 candidates. So on this next slide, I present two additional possibilities. Criterion number 1.2, align with the sponsor clear objectives for involving the public in the entire decision-making process. Again, this is assessed in the application and the case study response. But in this particular case, there are different quality standards that have been defined for the CP3 level and the MCP3 level. So if a candidate is able to establish objectives for involving the public consistent with the selected level of the spectrum and the decision-making process, they're eligible for CP3. They get that point. If that candidate is also able to demonstrate that those objectives are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-oriented, then they will be eligible for getting the 1 point for the MCP3 level. So in this particular case of this criterion, we've defined two levels of two standards. And then the third example is criterion number 1.13. This is assessed on the application only. And in this case, we don't anticipate that a CP3 level professional would necessarily be able to do this. But in this case, a candidate submit a final report at the end of a project that communicates the relevant lessons learned from the project and how those lessons learned can be used to continue to improve their work. So these three demonstrate three different kinds of cases that you'll see in the 35 core area. So in some cases, the same level of performance is expected for both. Some are different, and some we're only looking for at the MCP3 level. So I want to just reiterate that in order for someone to be eligible for CP3, they must demonstrate that they meet every single criteria at the CP3 level. At the MCP3 level, candidates must demonstrate that they meet every criteria at the CP3 level and at least 2/3 of those at the MCP3 level. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the application process and how to go about applying for certification. Step one involves submitting an application. It's a little bit like a job application. It asks for information about your education and employment, and as well as references. You have an opportunity to explain why you're interested in seeking certification, and you need to provide documentation that you've taken the IAP2 training. There is also a matrix of P2 techniques that provide an opportunity for you to show your level of experience. I've actually got a picture of that on the next slide. You'll notice on this slide that at the end of it says, please complete the table below to indicate your experience with P2 techniques, and then you'll see the number 3.1. This is directly associated with criterion 3.1, which asks about the number of techniques you've used in the past and at what level of the spectrum you have used those. So this table is your opportunity to demonstrate those techniques that you've used in the past. We want to know the name of the project where you used it and your role on that, and then what level of the spectrum. So another piece of the application is project descriptions. we ask for 3 project descriptions that will help describe your prior P2 experience. Each project description should be limited to 750 words, and it should include an overall description of the program and your role, the objectives, that the P2 objectives for that project, the level of the spectrum and why that level was selected, and the techniques that were used and why those techniques were used. This is just a look at the application. You'll see in this case we're asking for the things that I just asked you about, and then there's a series of questions, and again you can see the top one says describe the objectives and how they were defined, and that refers to criterion number 1.2. There are, in addition, some additional project questions. You don't have to answer these questions for all 3 of those projects, but there's some additional things that we're looking for your responses to. And then I want to tell you about a portfolio is also required. It's submitted with the application, and the portfolio is composed of work samples that allow you to document your prior work. We want you to think carefully about the breadth of your experiences to date and the core competencies, and then you're welcome to submit up to 10 pieces that you think will fill out our ability to evaluate all of your prior work. So the application provides the opportunity for you to describe the items that you're submitting, and then you attach those items to your application. So this is what the portfolio portion of the application looks like. The box is not, you don't attach your piece in the box. What we ask you to do in the box is to describe the item that you're attaching and explain why you're submitting it. So it's not a lot of room, but we just want to know why you think that piece was important for us to be able to take a look at. I keep saying us. I apologize, the assessors. At any rate, it might be a video, it might be a survey instrument, it's whatever you think will really fill out your ability to document your performance against the core competencies. So now I want to tell you a little bit about the second step in the process, which is the case study. Those folks whose applications demonstrate that they have enough skills that we think that they're ready for assessment will be provided a case study, and then they have an opportunity to meet with someone that is a project sponsor for that project, and they can ask questions about the project. Based on the information that's provided in the written case study and the meeting with the project sponsor, then candidates prepare a response to the case study and submit that prepared response for evaluation by the assessors. And then candidates will receive feedback from the assessor and hopefully an invitation to attend the upcoming assessment center. So this is just a glimpse at what the case study looks like. And so this is what you'll be expecting to see along with the case study. This is the assignment that would come with it. So the third thing I want to tell you about is the assessment center. The assessment center has been designed to allow in gaps and then also observe you professionally, well, in an assessment. It begins with a 30-minute private interview. This is held the day before the assessment center with one assessor, and they'll be asking questions to fill in any gaps that they've identified in reviewing your application and case study response. Then on the day of the assessment itself, each candidate has a 20-minute presentation that will be followed by questions and answers from the assessors. And then the candidates are divided into teams of 3, and they're presented with a typical public participation challenge. And the teams have 1 hour to prepare their response to that challenge, and then each team provides a 20-minute presentation, again followed by questions and answers. And then at the end of the day, each candidate has a private interview with the entire panel of assessors. And candidates are provided with an initial assessment of their results during that final interview. Then after the assessment center, a detailed feedback report is provided, and then candidates are asked to sign a pledge, and then they'll receive a copy of their certification for framing. There are ongoing certification requirements and a recertification requirements as well, and the details of both of those are addressed in the frequently asked questions, which is available on the website. On this next slide, I have, I got complaints from other task force members. There's a lot of words on this slide, and I apologize, but I just wanted to give you a sort of a glimpse at what the pledge says. It's basically a pledge that the CP3 or the MCP practice in full compliance with IAP2's core values and the code of ethics, and they'll continue to make contributions to the profession, and they will advocate for public participation as sound decision making. So candidates sign this pledge, and then they receive a certificate that we hope is something you'll be proud enough of that you'll want to hang it on the wall. You'll see the pledges on the left side, and then your name is in where your name here is. So before I wrap up this whole description of the process and how to go about applying, I wanted to come back to this slide and see if there are any questions that people would like to ask about the path to certification. If you could help me with that, Amelia.
I sure can, but at the moment there are no questions. Everyone seems to be listening very intently. Please, if you've got a question, don't hesitate.
Either that or asleep.
I don't think they're asleep, Wendy. It's all good. But if you could raise your hand or just put a question in the question box. I'm teasing you. All right, Wendy, I'm still not seeing any questions, so maybe we can keep going and come back to more questions later.
Okay, I've just got a couple more slides. This one is about the fees that are associated with certification. We have two separate fees, and part of our reasoning here is that we didn't want somebody to submit a big lump sum check and then we look at the application and say, uh-oh, they're not really ready. So there is a fee associated with your submission of your application that helps recoup our costs from reviewing the application. It is due upon submission of your application. So that's a non-refundable fee of $300. And then the assessment fee is $2,925. It is also non-refundable, and this covers IAP2's costs for having the assessors review your case study response and then the costs associated with running the assessment center. It's invoiced upon your invitation to attend the assessment center, and it needs to be paid before you attend. Both of those can be paid online via PayPal by check. And I did want to point out that the certification program is being conducted by the affiliate, so in this case IAP2 USA, and all of the money goes to IAP2 USA. Then the next slide has some important dates to be aware of for 2016 if you're interested in applying. They are the June Assessment Center is in one column, and then the September in another column. So those applications that we receive by March 17th will be eligible for the Assessment Center to be held in June, and applications received by May 26th will be eligible for the September Assessment Center. Notify candidates about their application, whether they're successful or not, within 2 weeks. And then about 2 weeks later, those candidates will receive a case study. Then they have 5 weeks to prepare their response to the case study. And then I think it's 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks after that, they'll receive final instructions and the formal invitation to attend the assessment center. So about 3 weeks before the assessment center, they'll get the final instructions and that they're ready to attend. And then feedback is provided 3 weeks after the assessment center. So with that, I believe we have 2 of our MCP3s online, and I wanted to open their mics and see if they have any words of advice for people. John Godek and Doug Sarno, I believe, are online with us today.
They are, Wendy. So I'm just going to open up. John's muted himself. So John, if you can unmute yourself, then we should be able to hear you. And then I'll open up Doug's mic. But just a second, John's mic is still muted. So let me open up Doug's and see if Doug is with us.
Okay, thank you.
Doug, I've opened up. Oh, I've got both John and Doug. You're both opened up now.
Oh, well,
can you speak, and we'll see if we can hear you.
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
Yeah, we're here. Or I'm here anyway.
Okay, so I'm going to mute.
Doug, you're on?
Yeah.
As am I.
Go, John.
So John's just muted himself. So we'll wait for John to unmute himself, and then he can get going.
I'm not sure how I wound up.
That's okay.
Yeah,
We can hear you now, John.
Yeah, I hadn't really anticipated anything. Thanks. I didn't really anticipate anything. I hadn't really thought of anything terribly glib or intelligent to say at this particular point, but I would encourage anybody that has any interest in this to at least go through the end, because I think it's certainly worthwhile. It was an interesting thing to go through. It was challenging, but it was definitely worthwhile, and I'd do it again. Doug?
Thanks, John. So I'm going to open up Doug's mic now. All right, Doug. Just need you to unmute yourself. There we go.
Yeah, I believe I'm unmuted. Unmuting an MCP3 is a difficult task, so good job. No, I would echo what John said. I think the other part of this is that, you know, for those of us who've been with IAP2 for quite a while, building the practice and building this greater sense of a practice of public participation is so important. And this is just a really wonderful aspect of that. And I strongly encourage people to go after certification. And then after you've made that leap, to take it very seriously, really look hard at what's being asked of you. Don't be afraid to ask lots of questions. And I'm sure that those of us who've been through it already would love to be there to be part of the process, even if we're not an official part.
Would anybody like to ask questions of either John or Doug?
So Wendy, I don't see any questions at the moment. There is a question, but I think that's more for you, and we can ask it towards the end. But there's certainly other people on the line. I'm not seeing any other questions. This is your opportunity. But if John and Doug are staying with us, then maybe people can ask it at the end as well, or maybe you can. So John and Doug, thanks so much for oh, we've got a question. That's okay.
Yay.
That's also for the end. So, John and Doug, thank you so much. We'll come back to you if we have more questions.
Okay, then I'd just like to open it up to any additional questions that you might have about the certification program.
Terrific. So there are a number of questions. And also a couple of comments. So maybe I'll do the comments first. And one's from John, who people have just heard from. And John said, if anyone has questions that they would like to ask either Doug or I, privately, please feel free to contact us. So that was very gracious of you, John. Thank you. So for anyone on the line, if you're interested in speaking to Doug and John, apparently they'd be quite happy to walk you through or answer any of your questions. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you need their information, and we'll make that available to you. The other question that we had was regarding the prerequisite, and just really wondering whether or not there was an equivalency to the Foundations program being considered. And is there any other options to meet that prerequisite?
So I'm happy to answer that question. I want to explain that most professions, architecture and planning and engineering, the list goes on and on and on. There's a field of academic study that people have participated in prior to seeking professional certification. And as I'm sure you all know, we don't have a direct path from academia into this profession. We have people from communications and public relations and journalism and policy analysis and conflict resolution and all kinds of different directions. And defining the resident body of knowledge that was essential, it's just not available. So the task force, after much deliberation, decided that the Foundations course that IAP2 provides is the best basis. It provides the knowledge, not the entire body of knowledge, but an essential body of knowledge that people need to be able to do work in this business. We've been asked if we'd be willing to consider substitutes, and I just would hope that you understand that we don't have the ability to do the research to make that work. It would require that we evaluate. Let's just say you want to submit that this is an adequate substitute. That would impose a level of effort on IAP2 USA to go out and research that substitute program, and it's not in our cost model to do that additional research. I think another thing I would say is that I took IAP2's training when I had initially about 12 years of experience in the field of public participation, and I found value in it. So I really challenge people that suggest that it's not relevant information. They've already been in practice for a long time. I don't really buy it. So at any rate, I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Wendy. So Wendy, I think there's no other questions at the moment. Is there anything left on the presentation?
No, I had one, which is just I wanted to formally acknowledge the task force. I've been honored to chair them, and this is all of their names if you're interested in knowing who they are. We put in a lot of hours developing this program, and I feel really pleased and proud of the work that we've done. And this year we're working on coming up with procedures for the program and planning to implement the 2 assessment centers. We also intend to do an evaluation of the program towards the end of the year, and then we will be selecting assessors for the program going forward. So we still have a lot of work to do this year. If you see any of these people, make sure you thank them because they've done a lot of work in developing the program.
Thanks, Wendy. Wendy, there was a question.
And I think with that,
there was a question, so there's just another question popped up. It's from Karen. She said, I took the IAP2 training in 2010 and I don't have my training materials anymore. Is it possible to get electronic versions to study from?
I have asked that of the Federation whether we provide manuals for people that took the training at some time ago. I have not gotten the response I was hoping for yet. So if you, Amelia, if you could please make note of the person that is asking that. I will put it on my list of people that I'm already started of that have asked manuals. You know, people that took the course 10 years ago are worried that they're out of date, and so I'll keep working on that issue.
Okay, and we do have another trainer on the line, and she indicated that she thought we could continue to sell manuals at cost, but whether or not there's an electronic version, I'm not sure. So thank you for following up on that, Wendy, and I'll certainly provide you with Karen's name so you can follow up directly with her. And
Great.
When possible, we should probably add that to the FAQ so that people have that information as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Just so that we've got that. And I know that Hannah is one of your task force members, and she said she'd be more than happy to say something if you wanted her to say a few words before we sign off, Wendy.
You know, Hannah, I'd love it if you had, if you wanted to share any reflections that you've got about the program.
So Hannah.
Yeah, I just want to mention, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just mention it's been a really excellent group to work with, and I came on board kind of wanting to represent young professionals in our field, and I think this certification program brings a lot of value for those of us that are earlier in our careers, and gives a really nice track of things to work for and goals to work toward. In, as Wendy mentioned, a field that can be kind of like just very diverse, which is a great thing, but sometimes it's difficult to figure out what your career path is compared to other fields like, you know, planners or, you know, engineers and that kind of thing. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done, and I hope we get a lot of people certified in a few years.
Thanks, Hannah.
That's all.
It's great.
You know, it makes me think, I want to add one point that I think our first three folks, one of the things that was a little bit challenging to communicate to them is that I think there's an assumption that part of a certification process is about a self-reporting of what you've done in the past. And when we looked into other professional certification programs, one of the things that was very evident across the board is that certification programs need to independently verify, and so it's not, we can't rely on self-reporting, which is one of the reasons why we have the project descriptions and we have the references and we have the case study. So we have to independently verify skills and capabilities. So just keep that in mind, that it's not just something that you can put on your application, oh, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, and you're going to walk right into certification, because it isn't that easy. We have to independently verify everything that you believe to be true about your skills and capabilities. So at any rate, well, thank you so much for your interest in the program. We do continue to take questions. When you submit those questions to us, we'll be adding them to something that's on the website that's called Questions and Answers, and so this isn't your last chance to learn about the program. So we hope to see your application soon.
Yes, we do. That deadline is coming up for the first assessment center, Wendy. So hopefully we'll get some applicants. So I want to thank you and certainly the certification task force for all of the hard work you've done to date. I'd also really like to thank all of our participants for joining us today. We look forward to receiving their applications. And with that, I am going to close today's session just with a thank you. So take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye now.